Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sandy Glaze. I'm a personal transformation and self-development coach, and we have the beautiful Desiree Holmes Scherini with us again today. And some interesting discussions have come up for me during the week. And what we decided we're going to talk about is the ego. And we're seeing a bifurcation happening in society. My opinion is that the war between good and evil is going to be the empaths versus the narcissists. Empaths are the ones who feel, who have heart, compassion, caring about others, caring not always for themselves, but we're going to work with that too. But the narcissist is the one who's not able to feel. They can't feel compassion for anybody. They don't feel love. They just want control, envy, things along that line. But what's happening with this bifurcation, we're starting to see who is going to what side. And so this has happened like 3 times for my experiences this week, just watching people trying to gain control. And I think that is what ultimately is behind it, is people don't have a sense of control, so they want to control. And as more people are waking up, they know they can control those people, so they're grasping at straws is kind of what I'm picking up. So Desiree, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. I'm just happy, like you can see the sunshine out the window. Last week was, cold and rainy. It's starting to warm up, and that really always helps. But
Totally.
as well, I'm happy to sit here with you again, as I always enjoy that. When you talked about people that like it's the bifurcation, it's either,
We have to decide.
revealing, and also personalities are revealing themselves, right? That might have been buried. And it just reminded me of this video I saw of somebody talking about, well, how do you test for a rotten egg? and you put them in water. If it sinks, it's good. If it rises to the top, then it's not a good egg. And and that's such a great metaphor, is that
Totally.
the we're starting to see some of these personality, the
Rotten
negative,
eggs.
rising to the surface, and
That is
revealing.
definitely a great analogy, great
Yeah,
metaphor, right? And it's
uh-huh.
not just that what we're going to see within like people in charge of organizations, we're going to see it in our own social structures. And the one thing that I realized about egos, and I've noticed this myself, you can have an ego in one aspect of your life and not another. And I'll give an example. Somebody can have a professional ego because they over-identify with their profession, or they think they're very good at what they do, and they may be. Doesn't mean it has to be attached to an ego. But what I'm finding, a lot of people think because they have a piece of paper that they're somehow more qualified than somebody else to answer questions. And that's just not how life works. It's one aspect of life, right? So I was going to break them down to professional ego. You can have a personal ego with friends. You can also have an ego in your family, whether it's a sibling or a parent or an extended family member. You can have an ego as how you identify. And I'll give an example. If you identify as a man or you identify as a woman. And I know some people say, you can't have anything to say about this because you're not a parent. That doesn't mean you can't have opinions about things because you're not a parent. It might,
Right.
you might have a bird's eye view because you can step back. And what I noticed when I worked in finance, money is very emotional. Family is very emotional. So they would come to somebody who's outside the situation to get them to have a look at it, take it apart, put it back together, and present a plan with a few options that that person can move forward with.
Yeah.
It's no different than what we're talking about right now. And this is really interesting because it's almost like they say there's no manual to raise a child, right? There's no manual that tells you how to be a parent. Well, what if they hit the manual and it's time to recreate a new one? So there's all kinds of ways that we can look at this topic about ego, and knowing whether our ego is present as we're making decisions or thinking or communicating is going to make a big difference, I think, in moving forward and being able to see who really genuinely cares. So I know I was a little late coming back in today, but I was out talking to my neighbor, and we were talking about, she was just asking basic questions about, what's going on and blah, blah. And we started talking about narcissism because she's reading a book on intuition versus ego. So,
Wow.
and I was talking about it. I said, you see how we're speaking? And I said, when you speak, I listen and I wait, and then I speak, and then you listen, but both of us share time here. It's not one person talking over the other. And I said, it's genuine. Well, she started thinking of different people that are always talking over her. and she realizes that person's in their ego, that she's kind of being taken advantage of. So it's just interesting. She just never gave herself permission to quite look at it that way before. Right. So interesting,
Yeah.
interesting things. So what do you have, what are you thinking about for egos? What has your experience been?
Well, as you're speaking, so many things came up. The first thing I think is an important point, is that there's got to be a balance. I was with a group this morning. We have discussions, and often in this particular group, it talks about the messages that we should be giving, we should be loving, we should be kind. And yes, that's true. But I brought up, I said, but there needs to be a balance. People can be giving, loving, and kind with boundaries.
Yes.
I said we need to have boundaries because we also need to be loving, kind, and giving to ourselves. So what happens when someone feels they're doing the right thing by being loving, giving, and kind, that, like you brought up, they may run into the narcissist who thinks that is just the candy store and overstep boundaries and take advantage. So the big message is, it's not like ego or love, or it is, there should be a healthy balance in relationships and also within ourselves as to how much we honor our own ego and say it's okay to be proud of my work. It's okay to be
Definitely.
proud of an appearance. But also then the other hand, if you go too far into only basing your worth and your focus on, something about you, like your work or your appearance, or without, having that humility as well. And, just kind of, there's got to be balance. Here's something else that came to mind that I started to say earlier, but I said, oh, I'll save it for the recording. When you talked about some people's ego is all wrapped up in their work, but they may not have a lot of personal ego strength.
Yes.
And it reminded me of the idea that a lot of very powerful business people, in particular men traditionally, are interested in subjugation, in what's the right word for it? Domination, or they may personally seek out the relief of being like, no, I'm not in charge, S&D kind of stuff, right? That they are attracted to that. And it's really an interesting thing. You would think, oh, some big, strong man who's very powerful at work, doesn't always carry over, that their personal ego may not be balanced, you know? And then the next thing that came to mind is, I'm not real familiar with this myself. I've not studied it, but I find it very useful when thinking about interpersonal reactions. But it goes back to that needs a balance, is in A Course for Miracles. One of the ways to reflect on our behavior, our interactions, is to ask, is it coming from love or is it coming from ego? When I'm reacting or responding, am I coming from a place of love or am I coming from a place of ego? And there is a way to come from a place of love, but in a balanced way that is love for self as well as compassion for the other. So it doesn't mean give up. It doesn't mean like, oh, you take it all, I'll live in a tent, It means there's, love includes self-love. So like, I think that caught me up with all these thoughts that came in my head.
There you go. And when you talk about, is this coming from love or ego? And again, we were speaking a little before and you're explaining a situation. And I said, no, she did not have your best interest. She was trying to dig you. You always ask, is this mine or somebody else's?
Yeah.
So is that other person causing this reaction or trigger? Are they trying to? So what I'm finding with this, the ego, people power playing, and maybe you have two people who work in a similar line of work and their egos are starting to go at each other. And it's like, no, just because we do similar work doesn't mean one's better than the other. Like sometimes it just means that, you might go to one person for one thing and go to another person for another, because one person, there's no one size fits all in the professional world that I'm finding. But what I'm finding is the egos are coming out, and that's part of the bifurcation. I think this is just energetically, but you ask, is this mine or somebody else's? because with the consciousness that's coming on the planet, as well as we're raising our consciousness, we're starting to pick up other people's thoughts and feelings, right?
Yep.
So know thyself is what's really coming up.
Yeah.
And I know you know yourself, but that's what's really coming up is know thyself, so that when something comes up, is this mine or somebody else's? An example, I know I've said this one, I don't know how many times. I was out for a walk one day, just had a lot of anxiety. I was walking for about an hour and a half, and I still had the anxiety. And normally I walk at a good clip. I can, it's like exercise, right? And I stop and I think, why am I still so anxious? And I asked, how much of this is mine? And I got 66% wasn't mine. And it didn't belong to any one person. It was just collective anxiety in the air that day. So you're
Yeah.
carrying it. So it's really important to know yourself. So when you are interacting, am I taking this personally? Right. So we always tend to put it back onto ourselves. Right. Am I taking this really personally? What's wrong with me? Nothing.
And I've been going through a situation recently where I am, having a defensive and angry response to something. And I say, okay, hang on. And I have, because it's not my nature to do that. But then I'm like, because it's not my nature, I have been like, it is time to stop this pattern and to say, no, enough is enough. You were
And
saying
set the
something about,
boundary.
yeah, I need boundaries, and enough is enough. I am not going to always be the loving, kind one. It's like, no. I mean, it's not that I'm not loving and kind. I'm just like, I got to love myself. And that's where I
Yes.
realized I needed to create this boundary. But because of just what you said, is this me or is it me? We question it. The healthy people will say, wait, is it me? And
Yes.
if you have the opportunity to check it out with other people, and I've checked it out with you, I've checked it out with several other people in private conversation. And I've said, these are the circumstances. And here's some examples. And I'm like, I just give me an honest answer. Am I in the wrong? Is it me? Because I really would like an honest answer so that I know if I'm, wacko
Or
or the
offside a
other
little
ones.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, no.
It's not you.
I'm like, thank goodness, on multiple people that I thought wouldn't just say nice things to me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, you
Um,
want honesty, and we all want the honesty.
mhm.
And
Not everybody wants honesty.
sorry, good point. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants the honesty.
Yeah.
So what I'm finding is, if we have a balanced relationship, think of these as just two people, two whatever, you kind of ebb and flow.
Mhm.
Sometimes one person gets more attention, but you just roll with it, but you're not in competition with each other. What I find happens, the nice ones, the empaths, come about here. I know I've explained this so many times, but that leaves the other person to come over and keep taking. And even if you are here, they might push really hard to try to get what's yours. It doesn't even matter what it is, right? But try to get what is yours. And this is where we're talking about the battle of the egos. This is where I think we're going to see it, because the egos are in the materialism, where the people who genuinely care tend to be more heart-centered. They tend to be more want what's fair for everybody, loving, kind. They want justice for all that along that line. So this is where I think the battle is going to be, that once we know ourselves, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because the one time when I tested you, remember defensiveness came up?
Yeah.
But it wasn't you. That person made you defensive because they were sneaking and trying to attack you in different ways. So it's yours. You have to deal with it, but it wasn't caused by you. And this is where we're going to see with the bifurcation, and we're going to see the egos start coming out. We're going to watch the little games. But like I said, there's about 3 of them this week, and I stood up to all 3, and I said no. And you know what I got? No, you're taking it wrong. So they're still going to blame you.
Yeah. Yeah. This one on our last talk about these different, and I have, since we went over those 4 points that you brought up about the tactics of a narcissist, I've had such fun saying, oh, I know what that one is. I know what
Totally.
that one is. If I say, hey, I'm feeling this way about what's happening, and I'm sad, and it's disappointing, and instead of like, oh, okay, let's talk about it. Well, you blah 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 made me blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, that was acknowledging what I had to say, not, you know. It was the, turn it around the other way.
And they're just tactics they use. So it's okay to understand, it's okay to see these. And, it's great in some ways. You can find these people and you find the games they play and you're going to see the insecurities. And you probably realize you're not going to invest as much time in them because you're not having a genuine conversation.
Yeah, that also came out was the, I'm just not going to talk about that. I'm only going to talk about this because it's
Yes.
like, okay, that didn't work well either, but,
Those are
um,
just tactics they use, right? So this is
yeah,
okay. And I'm not, what I want to do is make sure that I'm not talking about any one person, that when we look at
yes.
the behaviors will let you know if that person's an ego or not.
And I've seen this in multiple, different
Totally.
entities, individuals, and this reference isn't only to one person of like, say, well, there was this time that, this was a problem. No, it wasn't. Going back to that list, it's like, okay, it wasn't a problem for you. Yeah.
I know.
The whole thing, oh, you're taking it wrong. There's, something wrong with you. It's like,
Something wrong with you. So one of them, just again, power play I don't even know this person, it's just Facebook. But anyways, and then she said something about, oh, you're taking it personally. I just wrote LOL. And then she put question marks down. And I didn't answer. The best thing you can do is give them the gift of missing you, right? Leave
yeah.
them in suspense. So anyways, after a while, she goes, are you okay? Meaning I've got the issue. And
Oh,
I'm
and she
just
wants,
like,
are you okay?
right? Are you okay? Like, because it's
Oh,
genuine
good.
concern. But my
That's
point
pretty
is
funny.
not to take these things personally, but these are just old tactics
Yeah.
from a world that's falling down, the ego-driven world. It's going by the way of the dodo bird, but it's really important to see because we're going to be in a bit of an emotional flux as all of these games get played, right? So did I read this
Yeah.
list to you last time?
I know the emotional flux part. Um,
Yes.
let me see.
Did
I'm
I?
looking for something that I was, I just want to share this that I just saw the other day, that just is so makes sense. Uh, letting people, letting people be wrong. Okay, I can't see. That's okay. Now I'll be able to see it and read it just the right way. Teeny weeny little print. Okay, it was letting people be wrong about you or a situation while keeping your peace and focus is the most misunderstood power move you will ever make.
I know. And sometimes that
That's
will
just like,
cause them to do something else to punish you because you didn't react.
yeah,
And if you're in those games, that's you've got more work to do than just watching to see whose ego you have to avoid.
yeah.
Right.
And I just loved that because it was like, okay, that's good. You
And
know.
and sometimes you have to set the tone, or
Mhm.
like you did, you talk to somebody else and you explain the environment so that that person, if they've got healthy boundaries, they understand emotional boundaries, physical, spiritual, sexual, intellectual, neglect. They understand how all the dynamics work and they've got good boundaries on their own. So you can bounce your ideas off of them and say, does this make sense to you? And if they see both sides of the
Yeah.
if they see both sides of the conversation or whatever the like the behaviors, then they'll give you an honest answer. It's funny, I was watching Dr. Ramani. I watch her a couple hours every week, right? And she
She's
was saying in her
fantastic.
profession, she was wishing for more for her profession. I think she's a clinical psychologist. She said, I can't remember what half of them, if she said half or give or take, say 40 to 60, I don't recall the number, of the clinical psychologists are not trained in narcissistic abuse.
Hmm.
So if you've gone through an abusive situation with a narcissist, which is ego on steroids, you go to the therapist will say, well, it takes two. What did you do? Sometimes it's not you.
Yeah.
It's okay to get out of that environment and find somebody who understands the games. It's the behaviors that are going to help us see through all this nonsense, right? It's not
Yeah.
whether you like Sally or Jim or Joe or Bob. It's not about any of that. It's about what are the behaviors.
Exactly.
So it was
Yeah.
interesting. When I was out talking to my neighbor, she was telling me about a certain person, and she goes, "I just can't get away from her." And then she went and did this and got somebody else involved to call me to make sure I was okay. The same game.
Isn't that interesting?
So
Yeah.
so they all play the same games. As to what degree? But when we start to see that, and then she turned around and she spoke to this person the next day, and the person said to her, "Don't pull a so and so on me." meaning, so then she turned around and shamed another person who caught on to this person's behavior. And it's just a cycle. The only person who I don't think sees the game is the woman playing the game. Maybe she does, I don't know. But it's just so we start to see these games, but it helped my neighbor when I said right off the bat, no, that's not good. And she's like, no, I know it's not. And it's like, good. So you know you're not in the wrong. But
And so I think what we need to do is when we have the opportunity and power to, and not even if you don't feel like you have the power to, we have ways of not playing the game, right?
mhm.
And you know, that's why part of why I pulled up that that quote is sometimes it's just say,
Step back. It's easier to stay out of it than get out of it.
I'm not playing the game. It's like you can play in the sand pit with your toy all by yourself if you don't want to share properly or whatever. I'm not going to play with you anymore.
Yes.
And that's what, like when they start doing this, are you okay?
Yes.
You know, wait, come back. Yeah, like you took it wrong. It's like,
Totally.
no, that's okay. I still don't want to play with you. Yeah.
So those are egos. All of those things that we're talking about is just an expression of the ego, how the words come out of somebody's mouth and what they try to do to make it about you.
Yeah.
Right? You're the problem. You're the problem. You're the problem. You know, it's really interesting. The other thing I said to her, I was talking about so egos to me represent materialism, and the difference between Satanism and narcissism, nothing. Satanism is all about materialism.
Yeah.
Right? So what they do is they want to make you feel bad about yourself. So this is really a good point. So we were talking about in the 70s, the Clint Eastwood movies, 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And they would have somebody that would kidnap all these girls and torment them and whatever. They're always mocking them and tormenting them. And that's what they do. They want to destroy your morale, your sense of self. So that's what a lot of the egos, when they start battling you, they want you to think that they're better than you.
Uh-huh.
And to do that, instead of boosting you up and them up, they have to knock you down because that elevates them falsely.
And they honestly often usually believe they are better.
I
And
know.
that's a really, really difficult thing to get around when dealing with someone or a group or whatever it is. And I will say the government here, for example, as a bigger picture, it's like, well, we know better and you need to do what we say, regardless of whether or not you have an innate sense of is this good for me? No,
Right.
we're going to tell you. You know, and it's depending on the government that you're in, you might get more or less of that. But that was certainly obvious in the last few years. Do it, do it, do it, do it. And it's like, wait a minute, I don't think this is healthy for me as a choice for my personal health. Do it anyway, because we know better. And maybe as an entity, it has this higher form of, yes, we're the boss, and individuals will get that too. Like, well, I'm better. I'm better. So you
I'm
need to listen.
qualified. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of that happens in the education system when they go through for their studies, for whatever their field of study is going to be, that they are told that they're superior. And that's not how this works. You might be good at one thing, but it doesn't mean you've got the human figured out, the whole human psyche, consciousness, what life's about. It doesn't mean they've got that kind of pull over anybody. And it's good because I never even thought about even including them when I talked about the professions, but there's all kinds of professions that could do this. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
you might be
Well,
a brain
priests.
surgeon. Congratulations, you have a special skill, but that doesn't mean you've got good bedside manner.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
Or,
so that's interesting. So the word that came up, I meant to mention this as well. The word that came up for me when you were talking there is control. All of this is about feeling like you're in control. Sometimes it's you're better than, but it's got to be that I'm above this. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. And it's all about control and feeling superior. And that again is part of the ego's one of its go-tos, that it wants you to feel that you're superior somehow. And that
Mhm.
also, if you take it too far down the scale, that can lead to self-entitlement. And
Oh, yeah.
self-entitlement means that you think you're entitled to something somebody else has,
Yeah.
or you're entitled to more time from somebody, or what have you. It doesn't matter. It's just that you're over emphasizing the significance of what it is you want. You're taking something that others wouldn't do,
Yeah.
most other people wouldn't do, right? So I hope these ideas are helping people just understand that the ego is going to be coming out, and you're going to be thinking, if you haven't noticed, and all of a sudden an ego expresses itself to you, you're gonna be thinking, what was that all about? It's just gonna cause more confusion, but double check, is this mine or is this something else?
Yeah, and energetically, you brought up in the beginning of this, like there does seem to be just sort of a shift in the whole earth energy and the whole dynamic, and like you said, that these things are coming to I want to say, revealing themselves, maybe even coming to a breaking point, coming to expressing that conflict where maybe it was like this, but now they're bouncing off each other more. And so energetically, I think for individuals, I just want to bring up that we do need to practice for our well-being, balance, both outer and inner, stepping back when, this is what I've discovered I needed to do. Instead of jumping through the hoop every time and playing the game, and then saying, but wait a minute, no, I want to explain this. No, you, and instead of playing the game, to say, wait, stop, hold on. And even, just like I said, energetically, even if there's not an interpersonal or issue going on, that's like you commented earlier about feeling the energies from
Yes.
around us, that it's really important for us to just take a break sometimes. Sit with a nice cup of tea or whatever it takes for you. Sit in the sunshine, go out in nature, and decompress and get back into ourselves instead of soaking up negativity from around us. Create that golden shield of energy,
Totally.
and rebalance, reset, because it's so easy to spiral down when we let those other energies that would either vampire off us. I just want to share a little story. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and she was having an interpersonal issue with somebody who was playing the game, and she said she realized that she needed to just stop trying. She just said, I'm just like, step back, just like I was describing, not interact anymore, just not even try to make sense of or deal with this particular personality. And she says, I realized that this person was being a vampire and getting joy and feeding off of my interaction. And I realized I wasn't going to get my way or get any understanding or compromise or fairness. I just had to stop, even if it was at a loss financially, because it was going to cost more money to deal with it. Just stop, because she was feeding this, you know, and
So you're
yeah,
describing at least a narcissist, if not worse,
yeah.
because when you're watching them get off on that pain and suffering they're causing, that's
Mm-hmm.
ugly on the inside.
Yeah, and also for anyone who is an empath, who anyone is caring and usually wants to be fair, it's it's very unhealthy. It's not good. That cortisol level goes up, and if that stays up, it causes inflammation, it causes all sorts of problems. So the more we can take time to just breathe and let it all go see your local hypnotherapist or energy worker,
Yeah,
life.
so it's interesting when you're saying that. So, like, we know every day, I think people need a balance and take out time every day for personal, whether it's a hike in nature, whatever, walk around the park, whether it's a sport you like to do or a craft you like to do or something you like to create. We definitely know, but that's every day that people should be doing something at least one part of the day that's gives them joy, gives them happiness as well. And then that also comes from within normally because you're feeling it from within. But
Right.
so when you were talking about the energy and that other one getting like get really enjoying sucking the energy out of her. So what happens with the empaths? That can create a negative energy flow. So I call it like negative self energy or self ego. And
Mm.
what those people tend to do, they embody what that other person said. So it's important that you understand how wonderful you are, of course, but you also don't take on what's not yours, because over time, if you get criticized or you criticize yourself, So what happens, you're going to be criticizing yourself and not even knowing it. So you're basically beating yourself up through your own ego.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's intentional. Usually something has happened and there's been a trauma of some sort. And then what happens is you blame yourself because maybe somebody didn't help you at the time, or well, what else could it be? And it was interesting. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and at one point she stopped believing in God because she was born into a religious organization. And she said, at one point, I didn't believe in God. And I said, God didn't hurt you, a person did.
Hmm.
So it's really, but she internalizes, and this is what the empaths do. They internalize so much. And this is where you can get into negative self-talk. So these ones, you can doubt yourself. If you get told you're stupid enough, you start
Yeah.
telling yourself you're stupid. You could blame yourself, but it doesn't mean it's true, but you could just be a pattern to go to. You can shame yourself. I'm not good enough. You can guilt yourself. And I know we talked about defensiveness the one time on this, right? So you can get defensive, but maybe it wasn't you. That's usually an easy one to clear, because it's not the person who I'm working with. It's they got defensive because they got attacked and didn't know how to stand up for themselves. But like
Yeah.
jealousy's on here. There's just some good ones on here that's really important. So jealousy meaning other people jealous of you. And I don't mean you're jealous of other people. If you are, you still have to clear that out too. And that could be an expression of your ego. And worth asking, why are you jealous? What are you jealous of? Right? What does
Yeah.
it make you feel? And even if you do have a big ego, you can still clear it. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, but people need to know how to stand up to you. But if you've got a big ego and you want to make yourself feel superior to other people, maybe ask yourself why. What's missing in your own self-identity and self-worth
Yeah.
that you need to knock somebody down to feel better about yourself? I'm hoping we leave that era
Yes.
behind us when all this old stuff goes away.
And
Right?
there's a difference between, like, it's okay to have a healthy ego. Everyone
Yes,
should have a strong, healthy ego, but not a big ego that needs feeding
totally.
from the energy or reactions of others, or to, have to make someone else smaller in order to keep your ego up here. If you have a healthy ego, you're like an ecosystem.
Right.
It's self-generated, self-healing, self-feeling, and you're not relying, and we talked about this last time too, you're not relying on the outside world to make you feel better, or to fill up your empty cup. As long as you respect and honor yourself, then your ego will kind of just
Go and
refill
flow.
itself in a
Yeah.
healthy, appropriate way.
Yes.
And yeah.
So I think this is good. I hope this helps people just understand that when more confusion comes out in the near future, whether it's weeks, months, years, it doesn't matter. But as more comes out, people might be scared and they might jump into their ego, but it doesn't mean you have to take it if you're one of the empaths. You can find healthy ways to deflect it. Say no, thank you. That's not
Yeah.
mine. I hope you figure out what you need. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
learn to disconnect if you have to. So as usual, Desiree, thank you very much. This has been a great chat, and you'll find Desiree's information in the description box. You'll find mine as well. And if you have any questions for us, by all means, give us a shout. And we hope people found this helpful today, dealing with our egos. So
Yeah.
have a good one, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye.